What is 3.5 years between friends? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special live edition of Rebel HQ. Okay, yes, Donald Trump, he is not my friend. He's probably not your friend, but he has now admitted that he came up short in the 2020 presidential election. We'll play you his remarks. You tell me whether you think this is a deliberate ploy by Donald Trump or whether he accidentally admitted what he knew to be the truth. Also, who needs Beyonce? Beyonce was, according to Reuters and TMZ and a lot of news organizations, was supposed to sing at the final night of the Democratic convention. She did not, but by all accounts, she was not needed. Kamala Harris brought down the House. The reaction is pouring in that Harris stuck the landing, hit a home run, delivered. We'll get into that, show you some of the highlights. Plus, there is one attack from last night and every night of the convention that seems to be getting under Donald Trump's skin. We will explain why. We'll bring you the latest polls. We'll show you some of the awkwardness again of Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance, and we'll show you our ad of the week and our video image of the week, which actually doesn't have anything to do with politics. But let's get right into it. Donald Trump held a news conference in Arizona. He was talking about immigration being down his final week in office. Here's what he said. Watch.
And many terrorists, and this was, when I left, this is a very famous chart now because this chart probably saved my life. But this chart is showing, the arrow on the bottom shows that this was the lowest. This was the last week in office for me because of a horrible, horrible election where I got many millions more votes than I got the first time, but didn't quite make it, just a little bit short. We got to clean up our borders. We have to clean.
Okay, you just heard it right there. We got millions of votes, but we came up short. Was that Donald Trump finally admitting that he lost? We came up short. Now, there are two ways to look at this, and this is why I think it's breaking news and so interesting. First, Donald Trump has been told repeatedly, you need to be more likable, you need to be more trustworthy if you're going to have a chance in this election. He's been told that by his own advisor. So he has cut back on some of the name calling of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, although he's done it a little bit, but he's also tried to perhaps add maybe to his credibility. Perhaps he's finally admitting what he knows to be the truth, that yes, he lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden by more than 7 million votes. So that's one way to look at this, that Donald Trump is trying to sort of slip it in there so he can say, look, of course, the 2020 election is over and that's history. Or the other way to look at this, and I'll be curious to see your comments, is that maybe Donald Trump had one of his verbal glitches and he's not able to sort of 100% lie all the time, because in order to lie, you have to sort of consciously be able to sort of know, okay, I'm not telling the truth. I'm going to protect my lie. I'm going to string a web of lies here. But maybe Donald Trump actually glitched in this moment in this news conference in Arizona and said what he knows to be the truth, which he's been lying about, and that is he did come up short. There will also be some critics who say, look, this maybe isn't news because Donald Trump, on that infamous call to Georgia officials after the 2020 election, said, I need another 11,000 votes. And maybe that's what Donald Trump was talking about here, but it is still stunning to hear Donald Trump, of all people, after so many lies that he put out about the 2020 election and getting his followers riled up to have the January 6th insurrection, and Trump repeatedly saying that the election was fraudulent, that it was stolen, even though 80 courts rejected it. It is stunning now, less than 3 months until the next presidential election, to hear Donald Trump say, yes, we came up a little bit short, and not add some of the other nonsense that he normally adds to it. Curious to get your comments and your thoughts on all of this. And in fact, let's put up some of the comments to get us started this morning. Here we go. GOP grills Secret Service after Trump shooting. No, that's not what we're doing here. Hold on, I got to get my comments up here. There we go. All right, let's go. Bay outsay. Omar, no back for Trump. Wait a second. The senior citizen may still win. A lot of men will never vote for a woman. Indeed. You won't vote for her. All right, a lot of people, he admitted to Bob Order that he lost. It's on tape. Bob sits on it. Why? All right, good question. So look, this has sort of been out there before, but again, I think there's a strategic reason why Donald Trump is sort of letting this slide in right now, because he has been told repeatedly, you need to increase your credibility. You're losing on credibility. You're losing on likability. And so Donald Trump, I think, is trying to moderate things. And we saw that also the other day when Trump made a big point of walking around at a speech out of a sort of protective glass bubble. There was a woman that had fainted because, she was dehydrated. Trump left his protective bubble, went over to her to make sure she was okay, gave her a big hug in front of all the cameras, of course. The idea, I think, is I don't think Donald Trump, this makes Donald Trump an amazing human being. but I think what he's doing is it's all political. That Donald Trump wants to try to show the sort of warmer, nicer side of him because he's been told repeatedly by his own advisors and according to all the polling data that he's been showed that he is trailing on this. And this is a way for him to close the gap. So interesting stuff. Let's get to the Democratic convention. Let me put myself right up here. And so we made some history. The United States made some history this week. And first of all, this was the Democratic convention that a lot of Democrats had been hoping for. There were a series of great speeches. It was upbeat. It was entertaining. They did some things very differently from the past, including in the roll call where they had a DJ playing songs for each state. There was such sort of joy and certainly relief from the convention hall in Chicago, perhaps because, as some people had described, if it had been Joe Biden, it might have been 4 days of sitting Shiva, the Jewish term for grief, as James Carville put it. There would have been just a very different mood. Democrats, I think, are so excited to have sort of this younger contrast now between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And Harris has surprised a lot of Democrats with how well she and her staff have run this campaign. It has been nearly flawless for 3.5 weeks. And again, you saw a Democratic convention that went off, I think, even better than a lot of Democrats had been expecting. And so there was incredible excitement, incredible joy and happiness. And there was history made because Kamala Harris is now the first woman of color to accept a major party's presidential nomination. Here's the moment that she formally made the acceptance last night. Let's watch.
Of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Okay, so that was the history-making moment right there. And a couple things about the speech. Even Republican analysts have pointed out that it was a good speech because Kamala Harris essentially targeted at the middle. She told her story, talked about her story being sort of unusual, that she was a child of immigrants, that it was she had a single mother for essentially most of her child upbringing because of a family divorce. She talked about the life lessons she got from her mom, and the hard work and what she learned about hard work and standing up to bullies and going after your dreams. So she sort of told the quintessential American story and tied it in with only in America, with her love of America, that only in America could something like this, somebody like me with this sort of opportunity, rise to where she is now. And it was a very sort of effective way of both expressing love and admiration for America, but also underscoring what is possible in America. She also essentially pivoted to the middle by talking about foreign policy, standing up to Vladimir Putin, trying to bring peace to the Middle East. She spoke out in favor of labor unions, so she checked off, of course, some of the progressive boxes. But it was largely the speech that seemed to be aimed at people sort of in the center who were just trying to understand: is Kamala Harris like you or me? Is Kamala Harris somebody that I can relate to? And she did that because she talked about her sort of upbringing and sort of middle class people that she was surrounded by, plumbers and carpenters and construction workers in the neighborhood she grew up in Oakland. And so, at least according to Republican analysts today, they are describing this speech as a success. Republicans are saying, who are, putting aside whether they like her or not, whether they like her policies, they are describing this as a success. And everybody, the headlines are describing it as a home run, that Kamala Harris stuck the landing, as Politico reported, that she delivered, as I think the New York Times or one of the others put it. And this was the capstone on a week in which it went really well for the Democrats. The Democrats were able to have, they brought out their all-stars with Barack Obama and President Clinton. Tim Walz gave a rousing speech. They had some remarkable moments. It was entertaining. It was fun. There were jabs at Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris had huge expectations before her because after such a great week, you would think, oh my God, if her speech is not so solid, that's going to be a huge letdown. But by all accounts, she rose to the occasion. And the part of the speech that I found the most sort of inspiring, and I think is going to stay with a lot of people, was the end of the speech. And I want to play it for you now. Watch.
America, let us show each other and the world who we are and what we stand for. Freedom, opportunity, compassion, dignity, fairness, and endless possibilities. We are the heirs to the greatest democracy in the history of the world. And on behalf of our children and our grandchildren and all those who sacrificed so dearly for our freedom and liberty, we must be worthy of this moment. It is now our turn to do what generations before us have done, guided by optimism and faith, to fight for this country we love, to fight for the ideals we cherish, and to uphold the awesome responsibility that comes with the greatest privilege on earth, the privilege and pride of being an American.
So to me, that was the line, right? She's expressing love of America. It's a privilege to be in America. That's something we can all rally around. And also the end of the speech was a call to action, which is what a good political speech does. You deliver the speech, you accept the nomination, you outline your own biography, you talk about your vision of America, and then you ask people to go and act on what you're trying to say. And that action is reclaim America, show the world that America is back, show the world what America stands for. I thought it was a brilliant speech. It was well crafted, well delivered. And I think it's going to add to the momentum that we have already seen for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And we're going to get to the polls in just a moment. One of the other things that I think was so interesting is, and to that sort of point about sort of where we are, the inflection point in terms of American history. And you heard it more overtly when President Biden was the nominee, or was the presumptive nominee before he stepped out. And President Biden kept saying, democracy is on the line. Literally, America is under siege. Democracy, our Constitution, everything is riding on this. That didn't really register so well. So Kamala Harris comes along and makes it a little bit sort of different. But she pivoted back to those seeds that President Biden had planted by saying, you know, we have a duty, we have a responsibility to show who we are. And there was a moment, I think it came from President Bill Clinton during his speech. I think it was President Clinton, it may have been Barack Obama, where he said, you know, this is the most important election of our life, and you will not regret the choice you make. And this will be a choice that you will remember for decades, for years and years, you will remember this. And it was sort of a way of saying, yeah, this is a huge, everybody always says, oh, this election is the most important election of our lifetime. But the point that was made was that if you stand on the side of democracy, if you stand on the side of stopping the tyranny of Donald Trump and the extremism and the instability, this is something that you will remember for the rest of your life, and your kids will remember, and your grandchildren remember, and America will remember the choice that was made in this moment. And again, the choice that Democrats are putting out here, this is a choice between not just Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, it's a choice between stability and instability, democracy or something else, perhaps fascism, a move towards tyranny, standing for government institutions, the institutions we've long respected, the Constitution, the courts, the rule of law, versus standing for something else, giving more power to somebody who seems to want to be a dictator. That's how this choice has sort of been laid out. And again, for Kamala Harris to meet the moment as she did in her speech, to sort of reinforce that this is a historic election, to build on what had happened throughout the week, I thought it was pretty remarkable. And I think she exceeded a lot of expectations. I have memories of Kamala Harris running a lousy campaign in 2020, that her voice was screechy and annoying, and she had some strange verbal tics, and she was, off-putting in some of her remarks, except for one debate where she stuck it to Joe Biden. So because of that, and also because of some rumblings in the first year that Kamala Harris was vice president, when there was a lot of staff turnover and a lot of turmoil in the vice president's office, there was some angst among a lot of Democrats about, okay, Joe Biden steps out. Do we really want Kamala Harris? Can she really overcome what she did 4 years ago? Will she be a different sort of candidate? And by all accounts, yes. And she has now filled in her life story that I think a lot of Americans, a lot of blended families, a lot of parents a lot of families that are divorced, intermarriages, whatever it is, a lot of people can relate to. So let's move on to one of the things that came out of this week, and one of the key attack lines that came out, and we saw it from Kamala Harris, we've seen it from Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Tim Walz, is Project 2025. And Project 2025 is the blueprint put together by the Heritage Foundation, by some of Donald Trump's associates, in terms of what will the first 100 days look like and how will Donald Trump organize the U.S. government in a Trump administration. And what the blueprint calls for is eliminating 50,000 government workers, getting rid of the Department of Education, instituting some Donald Trump partisanship over the FBI and the Justice Department, taking away LGBTQ rights, giving tax cuts to the rich, getting rid of environmental regulations, giving more power to the energy companies. It goes on and on. And again, this blueprint, Project 2025, is out there, and it was featured repeatedly at the Democratic convention. Well, it got under Donald Trump's skin. By all reports, Donald Trump was infuriated and agitated by all of the attacks linking him to Project 2025. So he called into Fox News, and here's what happened.
I have nothing to do with it. I had no idea what it was. A group of people got together. They drew up some conservative values, very conservative values.
On Fox News, Donald Trump tried to distance himself from the controversial MAGA mandate for leadership and governing known as Project 2025.
In some case, perhaps they went over the line, perhaps they didn't. I have no idea what Project 25 is.
There's no think tank, no policy organization, no battle plan creator other than us for the worldview that I think Donald Trump has and that JD has.
So before I get to Walz, that was video. Hold on, let me make this big small here. That was before we get to Walz talking about 2025. That guy that you just saw was one of the Heritage Foundation organizers of Project 2025 who was caught on surreptitious video saying, oh no, Donald Trump knows all about us and we're carrying out the blueprint for Donald Trump and we are the only plan for Trump's transition and for governance that is out there. Nobody else has one. So the point being with this video is that this video, of course, undercuts Donald Trump. And by all accounts, I mean, everybody must know Donald Trump, of course, knows what Project 2025 is, but for political reasons, because Project 2025 polls so badly. And by the way, one of the things that is in Project 2025 is allowing the president, Donald Trump, to use the military to take away people's First Amendment rights and literally shoot people on the street if they are protesters. This polls so badly for the Republicans that Donald Trump is trying to create some distance and say he doesn't know anything about this. And again, the Democrats keep leveling the attacks about 2025, and they did it throughout the convention. Here is Tim Walz, the vice presidential running mate for Kamala Harris. Watch.
They spent a lot of time pretending they know nothing about this. But look, I coached high school football long enough to know, and trust me on this, when somebody takes the time to draw up a playbook, they're going to use it. And we know if these guys get back in the White House, they'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country with or without Congress. Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for. It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us. And it's an agenda that does nothing for our neighbors in need. Is it weird? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's also wrong. And it's dangerous.
Well, and you got in the line there that it's weird, which has been one of the attack lines to sort of minimize and make Donald Trump and JD Vance seem small, is that they're not like the rest of us. They're abnormal. They're kind of weird. They're kind of scary and frightening. But again, Project 2025, that the polling shows that this is moved the needle for a lot of independent, moderate voters. A lot of people still don't know what it is, but that's why you hear the Democrats talking about it and showing the discipline to talk about 2025 literally over and over and over in every speech. And there was Kenan Thompson, the Saturday Night Live comedian, who did this sort of skit about Project 2025 and had some guests on who didn't know what it was. So good for the Democrats. I mean, it shows really strong political discipline to take a message, repeat it over and over and over so that people hear about it. And you hear Donald Trump is nervous because the polls and the data all show that Project 2025 polls horribly, and it frightens a lot of people. And there are a lot of people who, may hear about Project 2025 and may say, gosh, I don't like that, but I don't like the Democrats, so I'm just going to stay home. Well, even if it suppresses the Republican vote and causes people to not vote for Donald Trump, even if they don't vote at all, that still helps the Democratic margins. And so one of the key attack lines, and again, attack ads never turn out vote. They simply suppress vote. They suppress vote of the people who are being targeted in the attack ad. And that's what Project 2025 is doing for the Democrats, and why you're hearing it so often, because it's turning a lot of moderate and independent voters against Donald Trump, because they hear this and they're thinking, why do I want this drama? Why is America going to have this drama? Maybe I'm just a Republican who wants low taxes and no government, but do I really want a Trump administration that's going to make all these dramatic changes and fire a bunch of government bureaucrats and empower the military to shoot people? That sounds kind of strange. I don't want that. Well, the message is breaking through, and Donald Trump knows it. Now, we showed Tim Walz there, the governor of Minnesota. There was a moment in his speech, which I thought was one of the most humane moments that I have seen in any political convention in a long time. And I've been covering political conventions and attending them since 1992. There was some genuine emotion by Tim Walz's family members, particularly his 17-year-old son, Gus, both when Tim Walz was announced and came out on stage, and then during a part of the speech where Tim Walz expressed his love for his family. Keep in mind that Tim Walz's son, Gus, 17 years old, the family has come out and said he is neurodivergent. He has ADHD. He's got sort of a nonverbal issue. And basically what it means is, and put aside sort of the mental health descriptions and everything, is that this is a young man, like a lot of young men and women that we all know, even in our own families. This is a young man who has difficulty regulating his emotions, particularly when there's a lot of stimulus. And so you think, here's this 17-year-old who's at a convention with, 15,000 people screaming their heads off. It's emotional because there's your dad up on stage and your dad expresses love for you. Here's the reaction. Watch.
Named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in on how we...
That's my dad. That's awesome. And for so many of us who have children who have either special needs or on the autism scale or have ADHD or have difficulty with their emotions, that was like a tearjerker. It shows the love that Tim Walz has for his kids and that they have for him. It shows the family connection. And it's just a pure moment of humanity that there is Gus Walz so overcome with emotion and saying, that's my dad, and with tears coming down his eyes. And so many people watching this had tears coming down our eyes. And then unfortunately, and sadly, predictably, there were a few people on the right, a few conservatives, Ann Coulter and others, who disparaged Tim Walz's son, Gus, who said mean things about it. And you know what? He's a 17-year-old kid. And even if he didn't have any issues and he was just, acting in a way that may have struck some of us as maybe inappropriate, whatever it was, so what? And I think people whose immediate reaction is to post something on social media or say something publicly that disparages the son or daughter of a politician, you got to check your humanity. Look in the mirror and maybe go through some therapy or something, because that's just grim. And the reaction has been huge across social media. There have been countless posts from people saying, Team Gus, I stand with Gus. People have been talking about their own kids and challenges in their lives and what it's been like and how sometimes kids get bullied because of their special needs. And this was a form of bullying that we saw from some Republicans and some conservatives. And it's like, what is wrong with you people? Ann Coulter, maybe you didn't know about Gus's condition, being neurodivergent and having difficulty regulating his emotions. So admit that and say, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That's the only way to fix this. But so far, I've only seen silence from Ann Coulter and others. And it's just despicable. And I think, this was a joyous moment. And, there was once a time, I think, when the head of a political party who saw his own supporters do something this despicable would have spoken out. And I was kind of hoping, maybe Donald Trump will come out and say, I stand with Gus too. And that I have either family members or I know families that have, similar issues. And we need to love all of our children and support all of our children and cheer them on when they're expressing their emotions like this and their love for their dad. And I think Donald Trump, there was an obligation on him to come out and say that. I think there have been previous presidential candidates who, if supporters of them had disparaged somebody, would have come out and sort of joined those rallying to somebody like Gus Walz's defense. But there was nothing from Donald Trump. And that's just too bad. I mean, I keep going back to when John McCain was asked at a town hall from one of his own supporters about, Barack Obama was not born here. And John McCain interface corrected and said, no, he was. He's an American. He was born in the United States. We just have some political disagreements about the direction of our country, but he is an American. That kind of John McCain-like honor, I wish was more mainstream. And I wish politicians had an easier time of stepping in and saying, you know what, the Ann Coulters don't speak for me. The Ann Coulters don't speak for us. Okay. And by the way, one thing that about this sort of moment that I want to say, and that is the happiness and joy that we saw from Gus Walz and from others. I think it fit really well with what this whole convention theme was like for Democrats. Democrats want to be happy again. They want the country to be joyous again. People want to be able to say, hey, we stand with each other. We stand with other families, regardless of what sort of issues you have or your background or your ethnicity or your race. We are all in this together, and we can all sort of join hands and solve America's problems. That's and the joy and the celebration of that was so evident at this convention. People were having fun imagining a sort of a world without Donald Trump, a world where somebody like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, given their backgrounds, can sort of rise to the highest levels of political power. The celebration of this was infectious, and it was nice to see. And people, you go to a convention to have fun. People had a whale of a time in Chicago. People having a great time, and that came shining through. And I think that joy, that happiness is an incredibly stark contrast with Donald Trump's Republican convention, which was all about doom and gloom and the migrants crossing from insane asylums and coming to this country and ruining this country. And we're headed to a depression if I don't win. And America is the worst it's ever been. All the sort of nasty stuff that Donald Trump is saying about America, it's tiring and it's depressing, regardless of your political views. And I don't think people want to go to an election and pull the lever or write in your vote because you're sad. I think you want to vote because of something you stand for that makes you happy and excited. Let's get to a couple of your questions, then I'll move on to talk about one of the biggest lies of the week we heard. Let's see. You were hoping something would come out and support Gus. There's no way he'd ever pull out the humanity it would take to do such a thing. Gus's love for his father is just what our country needed to see. I'm right there with you, Krizan. Appreciate it. Putin steal Melania from Trumpsky. Stop MAGA. Hallelujah to that. Yeah, hallelujah to standing with Gus. Most Americans now suffer from depression and exhaustion after Trump. Kamala and Tim are lifting our spirits. And Catherine, you are spot on. And you just said that more effectively than I did over the last several minutes. Okay, let's get on to the biggest lie of the week. See how we're going to play this. Okay, so Donald Trump spoke at a rally. And he is now out with this claim about Kamala Harris having met with Vladimir Putin 3 days before Russia invaded Ukraine. There's no truth to this. The only thing is that Kamala Harris was at a conference in Germany warning about Russia. But here's what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail. Watch.
When Biden sent Kamala to Europe to stop the war in Ukraine, she met with Putin. And then 3 days later, he attacked. How did she do? You think she did a good job? She met with Putin to tell him don't do it. And 3 days later, he attacked. That's when the attack started. Did you know that, General?
Now, the general didn't know that because it's not true. Well, Donald Trump then repeated that same lie on Fox and Friends in a rambling 40-minute interview. And Fox didn't challenge him when he said it. They didn't say, well, where's the evidence to that? It was only after Donald Trump hung up that then Brian Kilmeade offered a sort of correction. Watch.
There's a quick clarification. We don't have confirmation that the vice president went to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. I know she went over to Europe right before the incursion when Russia invaded Ukraine, and it's a war that's still going on right now.
I've heard that said a lot. You don't have confirmation that that's true?
No, I don't think that. I don't know if the vice president ever met Vladimir Putin.
I don't know if the vice president ever met Vladimir Putin. In other words, I don't know if Donald Trump is telling the truth. You do know, Brian. And if you're unable or unwilling to say Donald Trump lied, don't go to this, oh, I don't know if it's true. That's being a weasel. Just say there's no evidence to support this claim and leave it at that. If you're unwilling to say Donald Trump is lying, whatever, because of your allegiance to Donald Trump, just say the evidence is not there and let the audience decide then what to think about Donald Trump. But this lie about Donald Trump claiming that Kamala Harris, here's the other part about it, which is even more amazing. The idea that Kamala Harris and Vladimir Putin got together 3 days before Vladimir Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine. That's not only being denied by everybody across the political spectrum, including Fox News, it's also being denied by the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin's government is saying it's not true. And in fact, the Kremlin is saying that Vladimir Putin has never met with Kamala Harris. Never. So you know it's bad when Donald Trump is caught lying by Fox News. It's even worse when it's the Kremlin that is calling Donald Trump a liar. Let's get to Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. Or J.V. Vance, as some of my colleagues are describing him based on his behavior. And there was a really awkward moment at a donut shop in Valdosta, Georgia. This is Holt's Sweet Shop in Valdosta, Georgia. And J.D. Vance goes there for some sort of, I don't know, impromptu photo op. Watch.
I'm sorry, man. Okay, yeah. She doesn't want to be on film, guys, so just cut her out of anything. Appreciate that, man. I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay.
How long are you working?
I've been here since the beginning of July.
Okay.
For this year.
Okay, good. How about you, sir?
Almost 2 years.
Okay, good. Just everything, yeah. I mean, a lot of glazed here, some sprinkle stuff, some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever makes sense. How long has this place been around?
About 4 years.
About 4 years? Okay. How long have you been here?
A little over 6 months.
Okay, good.
Every question is, how long you been here? 4 years? How long you been here? Couple. You can tell based on very short answers that the people he was talking to either didn't like him, didn't want to be part of this photo op, and simply were really uncomfortable. And J.D. Vance doesn't have the personal charisma to be able to say, hey, what's the best-selling donut? What does it taste like? Oh my God, do you have any specials going on? No, it's like, how long you been here? How long you been here? How long has the shop been here? Talk about awkward. And so there's a fail on multiple levels. There's a fail with J.D. Vance and simply not having the charisma to pull off something impromptu like this, which is pretty bizarre and weird if you want to describe it that way. But also there's a terrible failure of his advance team. And that is when you are a president or vice presidential candidate and you show up at a restaurant or diner, you got to have your advance team go ahead as they always do and find out, okay, who are the people that are really willing to chat? Who are the people that might be supporters? Who are the people that are going to engage with their candidate? If you find out that the people behind the counter don't want to be there, they don't want to be on film, they don't want to be on film with you, you don't step into that restaurant or shop. This is a total fail by the J.D. Vance advance team. What a mess. And it goes to show that if you can't pull off a photo op and find some people selling donuts who are happy to have a conversation with you, you go to another place, you go to another shop, you go to a gas station, you go to a construction, whatever it is, but you don't go in. And by the way, you say to J.D. Vance, ask about the donuts, ask about the flavors, ask about the specials. Don't just keep saying, how long have you been here? How long has the shop been here? And every time people say, very short answers, 4 months, a few months, a couple of years. And that's it. There's no conversation. What a disaster. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. J.D. Vance. Weird J.D. Vance. A little bit of news that is breaking, if it hasn't broken already. There's every indication, let's put me back up full, every indication that RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., son of the late Robert Kennedy, who has been running as an independent, that he is going to end his campaign. He has already stopped his effort to get on the ballot in Arizona and some other states. Some indications that he's going to show up with Donald Trump at a news conference and endorse Donald Trump. A little bit about RFK. Here was his main message during this campaign.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm running as an independent candidate for President of the United States. I grew up in an America that seemed to have achieved its promise as an exemplary nation. Modern democracy had spread from one nation, ours, in 1776 to 6 by 1865 and to 190 by the 1960s. We had become the city on the hill. We were a moral authority around the globe. Our government, institutions, our Congress, the court, the regulatory agencies, and even the American press were renowned for their integrity.
Okay, so a couple of things, and I don't want to get into this, but Robert F. Kennedy, he had a pretty interesting message, a sort of a libertarian point of view. He is an anti-vaxxer. He believes that a lot of government agencies have been corrupted by big money, by, corporate interests. And that resonates with a lot of people, both on the left and the right, who feel that our institutions, our government institutions, Congress, the White House, government agencies have been bought and sold and trafficked by corporate interests. So that message from RFK had some appeal to a lot of people, but his campaign really never sort of got off the ground. And some of his weird stuff, talk about weird. I mean, there was RFK Jr. and his, drug use and multiple girlfriends and cheating on his wives allegedly through the years. And then, of course, the story that he grabbed a dead bear that he had run over and placed it in Central Park to dump it. I mean, and that he had talked about maybe he might skin the bear and eat it as he was there's just stuff that was strange. And so it just added to the sort of ridicule of RFK's campaign. Well, apparently he tried to reach out to Kamala Harris to say, hey, I'd like a cabinet post. I'll endorse you if you give me that. And the Harris campaign is like, it's okay. Donald Trump has had the conversations, and apparently he's going to embrace Robert F. Kennedy's support. Robert F. Kennedy's going to endorse him. And in exchange, who knows what Donald Trump has promised? Maybe it's a cabinet position. So what does it mean in terms of the polls? Well, over the last several weeks, when Kamala Harris got in the race, she was taking a lot of her support that she was getting was coming from the RFK supporters who had been supporting Donald Trump, but that they did not like Joe Biden. So they were going with RFK instead of Biden or Trump. When Kamala Harris got in the race, a lot of the RFK supporters were now like, oh, okay, well, instead of supporting RFK, I'm going to go with Kamala Harris. So the polling suggests, and even though there's some people in the Trump campaign who think this could be worth a couple of percentage points or a fraction of a percentage point in certain states, because if the RFK voters follow his lead and do support Donald Trump instead of Kamala Harris, that maybe that makes a difference. But my sense, based on the data and the polling, is that it will not make any difference, and this will be a wash. Again, because RFK has been cratering for the last several weeks on top of his issues getting on various ballots. And so I don't think his support for Donald Trump is really going to make much of a difference. And let's go through some of the polling. The latest Real Clear Politics average poll, drum roll please, Harris 1.5. This is where they take all the latest polls of the last 2 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks. They average them out. Kamala Harris is leading nationally 1.5. There's a Rasmussen Reports poll, which is the favorite of Fox News because it's led by Republicans. They have Donald Trump 49, Harris 46. The margin of error is 3. The more reliable and well-regarded Morning Consult poll, Harris 48, Trump 44. That's a spread of 4. The margin of error is 1. So it could be 49-44. It could be 47-44, but there's a clear lead with Kamala Harris in the Morning Consult poll. Also, CBS News, Harris 51, Trump 48. Again, that one's outside the margin of error, 2.1. ABC News, Harris 49, Trump 45. The margin of error, 2.5. Another poll showing Harris with the clear lead outside the margin of error. And then you look at the battleground states, and Kamala Harris now leads in most of the top 7 battleground states. And 2 others, it's close, and 1 other, she's behind. So the polling is moving in Kamala Harris's direction. And this was before the polls were conducted following the Democratic convention. In other words, there are no polls. I think there are polls that are just starting in the field now, but we have yet to see the impact of the last 2 or 3 nights of the Democratic convention. So one would expect that Kamala Harris is going to get a bounce, that this 4 or 5 point lead nationally could go up to 7 or 8 points, that she could take even a larger lead in some of these battleground states. And then we have 74 days until the election. A lot can change, and there's still a possibility of a war with Iran in the Middle East and Hezbollah firing missiles and bombs and Israel hitting back and a whole conflagration that could happen. You never know what can happen in the final 10, 11 weeks of the campaign. But right now, right now, the Democrats with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are in a great position. And one of the strategies we keep seeing from Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans is not just imagine what a Donald Trump governance would be like. Imagine the people that would surround Donald Trump in a Trump administration. And that leads us to our ad of the week. It comes from the Lincoln Project. Watch.
A second term for Donald Trump. What will it look like? Secretary of State Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis.
Homeland Security Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
Justice Department Alina Habba.
This is where your taxpaying dollars are going, America.
FBI Director Jim Jordan.
That's as radical as you can get.
White House Press Secretary Laura Loomer.
Trespassing Nancy Pelosi's private residence.
Give me some money to fund my lawsuits.
HHS Secretary Matt Gaetz.
The House Ethics Committee has released a statement into a number of serious allegations, including sexual misconduct.
Elon Musk for whatever he wants.
Go yourself.
No wonder Trump says,
You don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Kudos to the Lincoln Project. Again, one of the unsung heroes of this campaign. And this isn't a stretch. It's not a stretch to imagine Matt Gaetz and Laura Loomer and Alina Habba and Jared Kushner having key roles in a Trump administration, in a second Trump administration. And that itself is scary and frightening. And to the extent that that causes some moderate and independent voters to pause and say, no, wait a second, this is not what I want in a Trump administration. Even if they don't vote for Kamala Harris, if this kind of a message has the impact of causing these voters to stay home, to suppressing the Trump support, that is a benefit to Democrats. And that's why you see these attack ads. They're, largely sort of focused on here's what Donald Trump plans to do, and here's why we should all be freaked out by it. So good work to the Lincoln Project, also to George Conway's group, which has been running a lot of ads at psychopath.org talking about Donald Trump's sociopathic narcissism. And the ads are very well done. And we have yet to see the huge ad buys coming from Kamala Harris. But that ad buy is coming soon, $350 million that she is set to spend over the next couple of weeks. And she's coming off of what looks like to have been a $500 million month. Talk about fundraising. In 1 month, $500 million is what the total is going to be for August. It is remarkable. And that enables her to spend money on ads, both online and on TV and on cable, and to get these rallies set up. Then you get a lot of help with organizing. And by the way, politics is not just about the battle over the airwaves. It's about organizing people in field offices and getting people out to vote and keeping track of all the voters who in a particular precinct, and especially in the battleground states, we want to try to drive up the voting numbers, literally, hundreds here, hundreds there, make a difference. And when you have the organizers who have the money to be able to get people to the polls, to be able to pass out literature, to be able to identify who are the voters we need, organizing makes a huge difference. And that's one of the reasons why the money advantage for Kamala Harris is a big deal. Okay, let's end on some what I think is my image of the week. And this has nothing to do with politics. And I appreciate everybody who's been hanging in there. All right, real quick, we'll do a couple of comments before we get to this. Wait, Baron, are you? JD, it's okay to wear eyeliner just to and you'll feel much better. JD, wearing eyeliner at a donut shop. That is awkward. Dave, something you go, girl. Okay. Is Barron really that bad? Let's go to this one. Trump will have a hit out on Vance when he loses. You know what? That was the sort of the big joke from earlier this week. And I think this was it Barack Obama who said, JD, do you know what happened to why there's an opportunity? Or no, it was Jamie Raskin who said it. Jamie Raskin in his speech who said, I should have pulled this, that they tried to execute your predecessor, Donald Trump's last vice president. So anyway, but look, it goes to show Donald Trump's loyalty is to himself, and people who help him get his loyalty, and people who seem like a drag, I think they're in trouble. Who was the hotter woman, JD or Rudy Giuliani? I shouldn't laugh at that. Barron wishes he had Bruce Wayne origin story. All right, very good. Let's get to my image of the week. And remember, we talk about trying to step away from politics and all having our passions and activities and things that we can share with friends and family and neighbors that make us feel good, make us feel good about our community and our world. Well, here's the video of the week. It involves people in Monterey, California, Northern California, sort of south of San Francisco. The beaches are now closed, at least for the next 3 or 4 weeks on Monterey Bay, and here's why.
they're incredibly loud. And it's like, you know, this is like the sea lion convention, you know? So I don't know what party they're in, but, you know, they're definitely all got something to say.
For the most part, what you're seeing here are male and subadult male sea lions. And they are incredibly mobile. They're
Okay, so they've taken over the beach. The beach goers can't go to the beach in Monterey, but they can go and watch. And this is just part of the ebbs and flows of Mother Nature. And the sea lions, for all sorts of reasons, have decided to come on land for a little while, for at least a couple of weeks. And so they're just hanging out. And people are coming and watching, saying, this is amazing to see thousands of sea lions just all gathered on the beach and sitting there. And it's such a sight to see. And people, families are going and neighbors are going and everybody in the Northern California is hearing about this. This is amazing. Their own sort of sea lion convention. How appropriate. And we got to take joy in images like this with Mother Nature and all the horrible things that can happen. But when wonderful things happen like this, a group of sea lions getting onto a beach, that is something we can all take joy and pleasure in, something we can all celebrate. And better to celebrate videos like this with your friends on YouTube and friends who are watching Rebel HQ, and also with your friends in person who go to Monterey Bay. Well, that will do it for this edition of Rebel HQ Live. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and, well, you're already here, and click on the subscribe button. That way the algorithm will feed you some of the videos that we put up on Rebel HQ, so you don't have to search for them. Also, if you really want to help TYT, become a member. Go to tyt.com. Your membership will enable you all kinds of content from Cenk and Anna and the rest of the team that you can't get if you're just sort of watching. So I encourage you to do that. On behalf of everybody at Rebel HQ, I'm David Shuster. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.